So for the astro imagers in the crowd, we've just had a major shock yesterday. PixInsight issued a new version, which is it's not so different, but it's different enough where they say, please reprocess all of your former images to get the best stuff you can get.
Just what I wanted to hear.
Now,
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Is my voice coming through clearly to you guys?
yeah, it's great. It's great. It's great.
Okay,
No problem.
Yeah. So I'm happy to say, being a procrastinator, I haven't processed anything for at least a year or so. So I'm good.
Yeah, sometimes it pays to procrastinate.
Yes, indeed. And also being a hoarder, I hoarded all my old FITS files, so I'm in good shape.
I don't know if you read my response yet.
Yeah, Joe actually raised a very good point about it pays to keep your old stuff because storage is getting so cheap. So why not?
Yeah, and I don't keep any of the intermediate files, so it's
Yeah, exactly. Huh?
not a big issue. I just assume I'm going to process things if I have to do a second or third run at it.
Besides, you have all your notes from Evernote, right?
Yeah, I have processing notes, which hopefully will keep me out of trouble. And of course, I keep the log files, so I can, if I have to, if I need some particular figure, I can always go back to the log file.
Yeah, that's actually a nice feature. Actually, I've actually anytime I've processed, I've always kept just simple text files in the same folder, and I just kind of make notes to myself in the text file.
Good idea. Good idea.
Yeah, no, that's what I do too. And then I just change the name of the log file to the date that I processed, and then they'll all stack up if I make multiple runs. So it's all there.
Yeah, it's an old trick from
get rid of all the intermediate files, because otherwise you're going to be archiving until you're old and gray.
Exactly.
And you see how big some of those files get? Like, they're atrocious.
Yeah, that's why I just keep the start and the end.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
We got quite a crowd tonight.
It's building. 17.
I hear that Bill is a chef.
Yeah, I was thinking of inviting him over to my place to prep a meal if he's into it.
What do you think about that, Bill? Well, he must not be on.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, you are. You're just ignoring
no.
us?
Were you cooking some more exotic mushrooms, or?
For the other night?
Yeah.
No, for the birthday party.
Yeah, no, I was cooking. Well, what did I do? We made cake, and I made something I call meat sushi.
Meat sushi?
Yeah, it's kind of like a roll. That's like a cutlet with sausage inside and cheese, and you bake them all rolled up, and then you slice them and present them like sushi.
Well, that sounds lovely.
But there's no nori though, right? Is it?
No.
Is it? There's no rice either, right? It's just the
No, there's
method
no
that you're
rice.
talking about.
Yeah.
Is it cooked or raw?
It's a joke.
Well, he said he cooked it up.
It's not like sushi at all.
But it presents like sushi.
Right.
You
It's
put it
cooked.
out like a dragon roll.
Yeah.
Sounds like fun.
Well, Marjie, I must admit, I'm still recovering from my job description declaration you gave me last week.
Good.
Still recovering. You're like, oh no, what have I got myself into?
Sometimes it does help to read the job description before you do the job.
But yeah, I agree. Yeah,
I
Bill
had-
made
You're
that
worried
point.
about choosing speakers. there are so many people that are kind of either formally or informally online. It's just a matter of keeping track of it all.
Oh, I'm not, it turns out I don't have to do that.
Ah.
Dave gets to do that.
He's
Dave
not,
gets
he's
to do
not the
that.
speaker guy.
Yeah, and Dave had the same reaction I had. Oops. Oh,
So what
well.
is second vice president officially?
Well, to tell you the truth, I still haven't read the job description, but I'll get around to it.
I can tell you.
I don't trust you to tell me. I gotta read it. Joe told me where to find it.
Well, that's good. Well, maybe you can send it to me and then I'll know what I did.
Yeah,
What
right.
we're really
Well,
hoping for is
It's
5
just a
years
one,
of
it's just a
stability.
one-liner.
Yeah, right. 5 years of stability. Okay, there you go.
If
I
Dave
wouldn't call
will
it a
take
job
over as
description.
president and then you'll take over after that, then we don't have to worry for another 5 years for succession.
That's kind of what I'm thinking too. Oops, here we
There,
go.
if you're interested, right there.
Special projects, observing advanced volunteers. Okay. Observing events. Great. Now I
Yeah,
just have
no,
to figure out
no
what that
pressure,
means.
Gary, but the first special event is Astronomy Day, and it's coming up soon.
Oh,
And you have to
May
coordinate
7.
with everyone who's involved in astronomy in Victoria.
okay. Who did it last time?
Talk to David.
Okay.
Yeah, I did it last time. I mean, I did it hesitantly in the sense that I didn't really do it. I just engaged people to do pieces of it. Which I would-
You've done it
if-
before, or you've been
If
involved before.
you take it on, Gary, that's what I suggest that you do.
Okay. Well, I'll talk to you again. And what's that, Rich?
Delegate.
Can I just say here, there's a lot of revisionist history going on, and the person who's responsible for Astronomy Day is a director of outreach.
That's
Oh.
true. That's true.
Do we have a director of outreach?
We
Yes.
do. We do.
Malcolm.
Oh, there you go, Malcolm. Go for it, Malcolm.
And I'm supposed to know this, but when is the next council meeting where we're going to talk about Astronomy Day?
When you call it.
I thought you'd know that.
I don't
Okay.
remember the date.
We were
We're not-
kind of out of schedule there because we had the council meeting, then the AGM, so now we need to kind of get back into our schedule of council
Yeah,
meeting.
right. We're not dysfunctional.
I will work with the team to work out when our next meeting, but it should be soon. And everybody should know that May 7th is actually happening at the museum. And Lauri, what's the word with the friends? Are we going to try to get on the hill also that same night?
Hi there. We have not been officially told anything yet. I mean, we're still just working on it. Right now, I'm still looking at it as a virtual event up at the, from the center in the evening with Chris Gainor, but we're really hoping it might be open, but we don't know that yet. We haven't been given anything official, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, and there's no reason it couldn't be a mixed event as well.
Yeah.
And we don't have to go crazy with this either, because in a sense, this is a reintroduction for ourselves of outreach. So we don't have to do like, I don't know, like a 10 to 5 event or 10 to 4 event like we normally do. That was Lauri's suggestion. I think that's a good idea, not to tax ourselves too much.
And are there limits at the museum site at the moment, or are they fully reopened?
Everything's changed since Dr. Henry's last announcement.
Does anybody know? Are they, so no room limits or
You
anything?
don't have to wear masks.
Yeah. No, I'm just thinking about being in that room. Do we have to count people going in and out, or no, it just opened and?
I think from what I read, it was opened. Yeah.
Right.
There's no occupancy limits anymore. They're gone.
No.
Yeah, that's right.
But a place could institute them if they wanted, so.
They could, and
BC Museum has not, so.
But
they
the
could,
museum
and-
can't do that because they're a part of the province, and so the
Yeah.
provincial rules apply.
But you know, interestingly enough, I was out grocery shopping today, and I would say 75% of the people still had their masks on.
Oh, that'll happen
Yeah.
forever now.
Yep.
People realize it keeps the bugs away, so they'll be staying masked when they're in crowds.
I noticed the same thing. I didn't notice any difference, quite frankly. Aside from
was
the
at a hockey game
anti-maskers
last
I'm
night.
complaining.
I was at a hockey game at the Q Center last night and only half a dozen people had masks on.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
depends
I
on
was
the crowd.
surprised. It was felt strange.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's a little after 25 to, so I'll welcome everybody to Astro Cafe this evening. So far, I have Randy to give a brief presentation, and Dave Robinson was going to give us an update about a big project going on in Edmonton. Does anybody else have anything for this evening?
I'll
I
just,
managed to get one picture.
Okay, that was Brock?
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks.
Can somebody show off Dan's photos?
I
That'd be
can
a
show
good idea.
them, but I was kind of reluctant since they're his, not mine, but I can certainly show them.
Well,
I'm
he,
sure you won't
he
mind.
said he wasn't coming tonight and was kind of hoping he would, so.
Okay, I'll be happy to do that.
They're pretty good.
and Chris, I'll just give a little bit of an update on the star party for Saturday night.
Sure, sounds good. I was just going to remind everyone about Chris Gainor's book, by the way, and and thank you, Martin, I'll put you on the list. He had pointed out that you could email NASA and request your own printed copy, and I did that, which I'd actually forgotten about, and it arrived on Thursday. So
Hey,
it is a beautiful book, and I know Chris is getting some as well, but if you want your own, you can just get it shipped right to you.
Chris, did you have to pay for the shipping?
No. And
Oh,
funnily
really?
enough, the postage thing came from the Swedish post office with a return address in Malmo, Sweden, even though the
Oh.
label on it says it comes from NASA in Washington, DC. But the little postage thing said Sweden.
How about that?
So get busy and order one, right?
Yeah,
Chris?
yeah.
Chris, when
Yeah.
did you post that order?
On the right after the meeting on the 7th of February, and I'd totally forgotten about it.
Hmm.
And then, as I said, it had arrived, so it's
Yeah, I posted it within 15 minutes of hearing about it from Chris. So I'll look forward to my mail soon.
so this is where I sent the email. I just that was the address, info-center at NASA HQ, basically. So, and I just asked them to send it to me, and I sent it on my RASC email address. So hopefully they realize that I'm interested in astronomy. Anyways, and it is, boy, I would say, Chris had talked a little bit about the book, but I hadn't realized it is gorgeous. They've done a beautiful job printing it. I would say they spared no expense. So I'm really pleased to add it to my collection of books.
is it illustrated all the way through?
Yes,
What's the exact title again, Chris?
not yet imagined. I don't know if you can, it's kind of hard to see, but I mean, there's a page that's got the yellow box at the bottom. If you've seen it, the PDF version, it's identical to that, basically. And
You
it's
can
got
also get
photographs.
the Kindle version if you want to.
Yeah.
That's free. It's
There's
on Amazon.
There's a good example of a page there with the text and then pictures.
Huh. And where do you pay for it? Are you directed to a website?
For NASA, it's free,
Oh,
It's
it's
free.
free. Oh my goodness.
including all the postage and everything. It just arrived. So,
Okay.
Crazy.
So
and as I said, I'd forgotten about it. And it's kind of like, why am I? Oh, the book. Yes, the book. Very good. Yeah.
what
So
else have you
it is-
ordered that you forgot about?
Yeah. It was a nice surprise. Anyways, it's Okay.
Chris, I ordered it on February 6th. So
okay.
You're the 7th?
Yeah, so I beat you somehow. I don't know.
I don't know.
Anyways, yeah. So I guess it's on its way. Great. So thanks. Yes. So I put that out there, and thanks for people who have stepped forward to speak. So Randy, if you're ready, we can start with you.
I will start. Share screen. And no, come on. There we go. You can see that?
Mm.
Okay, so it's one of the great tales of adventure, but also with a really interesting astronomical side. And I'll use this as an occasion to kind of go through some basic navigation, practical astronomy, which I find so fascinating. So the big story is Ernest Shackleton thought it would be a clever idea to walk from one side of Antarctica to the other. And he got all the best equipment and people of the time and took this beautiful ship, the Endurance, to land on one side of Antarctica, got to within 60 kilometers of his goal, and it got stuck in the ice. And from then on, it was, instead of trying to get the goal done, it was about survival. They were stuck in the ice for a year, and then the next summer, on November 21, it sank. And then last week, they found it. And I mean, that is a whole other story, which is just great. And one of the things I really like about it is the team has been live casting the mission for the last month to a bunch of school kids. There's about 1,000 classrooms around the world that have been following this project. And when it actually came to the announcement of the discovery, the only people who were allowed to ask questions were these kids from all over the world. And you can watch it on YouTube. It's joyous. It's absolutely wonderful. And the other thing that's amazing is when a ship sinks in the Antarctic, there are no wood burrowing beasties. And so it's almost like it sank yesterday. Like you can see the caulk between the boards. There's nothing that is missing. There's some barnacles and anemones that are living on it, but basically it's just like it was the day that it sunk over 100 years ago. Okay, so here was the idea. The ship went to Buenos Aires, then to South Georgia Island, and then it made its way down. This is the summer, of course. And look how close they got to the land, 60 kilometers. But they got stuck, and then they moved along just by the ice. The ice was what took it along, and it was by when next summer was coming in that the ice started shifting, and they talked about these pressure waves that made these huge sounds, and it squished and broke the ship. And then, I mean, the rest of the story is crazy. They walked their lifeboats until it came to water, and then they ended up in Elephant Island, but they knew that nobody was going to save them there. There was, 28 of them? So one of the 3 lifeboats, they went for like 3 weeks and navigated to South Georgia Island, but on the wrong side of the island, so they had to climb over the island to the whaling community there. When they arrived there, they practically scared the whalers to death, but they convinced them that they are humans, and they took a boat, saved everybody. Nobody died. And great story. Anyway, the navigation was done by this fellow, the captain and navigator, Frank Arthur Worsley, and he wrote exactly where he measured the ship to have sunk, down to half a minute of accuracy, of precision. and there's been lots of talk about what, people had been looking. There had been several missions to try to find the ship, and they never found it. So let's talk about what Mr. Worsley did. So getting latitude is not too difficult. So I've got the same instrument that he had. Mine is about 50 years younger than his. This was 1941, but exactly the same instrument as Worsley would have used. The sextant measures angles, and in particular, if you find the highest point that the sun hits as it goes through noon, then you can know your latitude, right? Because if you know what the date is, so you know where the sun is over the horizon. So that is the delta in this question. So if it's an equinox, then it's 0. It's over the equator. And you measure the height, and your latitude is just 90 minus the height in degrees. I can do that pretty well. I've done that, found my place here in Victoria to within a few kilometers.
Excuse me, Randy. I've always wondered, how do you determine exactly noon? Or do you just start?
Well, it's the highest point. The highest point.
So you just take a bunch of measurements and take the high, and how do you know you've reached the highest point if it starts going back down?
You know what? It's a really, really good question. You know, I have a computer and I can actually fit a parabola to my measurements, but it's measuring for the half hour before and half hour after, and you get this nice arc that you fit.
Okay.
Really good question, Gary, because the actual noon measurement is not the best. It's the bit before and the bit after, which you fit with a parabola. And I'd like to know exactly what he did. Maybe he's just that good that he made a good measurement. And the other thing is sometimes, which was especially good when you're on solid ice, is you use a theodolite and use a level rather than the horizon, because the horizon wasn't really good where they were. Great question. Okay, longitude is more difficult, as you know from David Sobel's book, if not 100 other books and things. Knowing the longitude, you have to know your time. Because let's take, in this case, you have Greenwich, the prime meridian. When the sun was over the prime meridian, that was noon in Greenwich. But the sun goes around towards the west, and we know the equations for figuring out exactly where the Greenwich hour angle, the GHA, is. And so if you know where your local hour angle is, then you can work out how far the world has to spin around before it comes to your place. And so in order to do that, you need a good clock. So yeah, this is just to show you that the math of this is not that difficult if you know the date and you know your latitude. Well, how do you know your latitude? You know your latitude from noon measurements, but the best time to work out your longitude is your morning sight and your evening sight. And the problem is you're not in the same place. Usually you're on a ship that's moving along. And so that's called dead reckoning, where you know the direction that you're going and your speed, and then you can work out what your latitude is at any point in time, but you have to know what your speed is and everything. So that is what the L is. The L with the underline is your assumed latitude. And then you plug these things in and you know what the Greenwich hour angle is, and then you can work out your longitude. Okay, so you need time and you need to know what your latitude is. Anyway, Mr. Worsley, he was just a fantastic navigator. And again, he didn't have any computers. It was all pencil and paper and using the nautical almanac. And he traced out this really curvy line every day that he could see the sun. He made measurements. Not sure. Well, he must have used the moon and the stars during the winter, because a lot of this, there was no sun. They're south of the Antarctic Circle. That'd be an interesting thing to see what he was doing during the winter. But the sun had come up and the ship was crushed. And then that was on the 27th. So 3 weeks later, the ship sank. And then they had to walk to Elephant Island. My goodness. Okay, so yeah, there had been several missions to try to find the Endurance. But in particular, there were a couple of papers. Did you know there was something called the Journal of Navigation? Anyway, these two people, Bergman and Stewart, wrote a really very readable paper. And then they submitted this more recent one, and it's released as a preprint because they wanted the people involved with this mission to have it openly available. So this has not actually been published yet, this second paper. And the middle author, David Mearns, is associated with the mission and with the last failed mission to try to find it. And he's gone all over the world looking for ships. This is his gig. Okay, I'm not going to read this all to you, but I want you to see that the Endurance had 24 chronometers. And the thing that I just love about this whole story is so much of the actual artifacts of the mission exist. And in particular, the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich has the Mercer chronometer, 5229. They know it so well. And this little pocket watch thing that they used, the Smith watch, is in Cambridge. So here they are. Beautiful pieces of work. I'm not going to talk about the navigation to get to South Georgia Island afterwards, but apparently you got to keep these things at the same temperature. And so this is the one that they used, and Worsley kept it just inside his shirt just to keep it at the same temperature all the time.
Randy, were these just kind of like a spring mechanism with a wheel inside, or?
Yes. Okay, so this is the whole Harrison, John Harrison story, which is a great, this is one of the great astronomical stories, which if you guys really want, I'll happily go through it, but it's Davis Obel's book called Longitude that goes through it. So yes, they are spring clocks, and they would keep them in the center of the ship. There would be a special room just for the chronometers, and they would wind them the same time every day and try to keep them the same temperature. It was life and death. This was one of the most important functions on the ship, is knowing the time. And so
Randy, would they have had a natural event for which they could kind of just make sure they were right? Like if they had drifted, could they resync?
David, you anticipate my story. Well done. So here it is. So this is not a real picture. This is an animation from April 22nd, after our AGM, when the binary star Zubin el-Ganubi first of all went behind the moon and came out the other side. And a few of us were up that night, and I saw when the major star of Zubin el-Ganubi went behind the moon, and I was within 15 seconds of what the published time for Victoria was. So, and that was the first time I ever tried it. And David, thank you for getting me up that night. I really enjoyed that. And there was a whole bunch of us that did that. And it really did look like this afterwards. I started too late to see the minor part of the pair going behind, but I did see this afterwards. And that's really what it looked like. But the chronometers were set in Buenos Aires before the trip, before they headed south. But they did have two, what do you call them? Two occultations to set the time. And what these authors did is they used modern astrometry using the Hipparcos positions for the stars And it was kind of tricky because one was a double star, just like what we saw, but they were kind of the same magnitude. This is the Alpha Ophiuchi, and they hit the disk of the moon at about the same time. So there's a bit of a question whether they looked at the A or the B of this binary. So, there's so many lovely details that they had to go through. But what I just love is all of the logs and everything survived. So in New Zealand, in a museum in New Zealand, they have Worsley's logbooks. They're perfectly legible. And so this is how from October 1st until November 21st, and then all the way to the end of November. So this is 2 months of drift. And those are 10 minute, so about 20 kilometer bars, okay? So this is pretty fine navigation. And the lines that are together were days that were seen consecutive. So this is the ice pushing that ship around, and the X is where they figured it ended up. So the ship went there and they looked east. Why did they look east? Because the authors figured that the chronometer was about 22 seconds fast based on Worsley's notes and what they know now about when those occultations occurred. They didn't find it. They looked west because maybe the chronometer was slow, not fast. And that was what people had assumed before, that he made an overcorrection for the amount. They thought it was 4 seconds a day, but he used the number 5 seconds a day for the difference between the chronometer. Anyway, just as the mission is almost finished, because the ice is coming in, winter's coming down in Antarctica, and this icebreaker was already stuck in the ice for a few days, and they were saying you've got maybe 3 days left, and they looked south, and there it was, 6.5 kilometers south of that point that Worsley had predicted. And so that works out to 3.4 minutes of arc. Okay, so when you take a look, so you never with a single measurement get a point. What you get is a small circle. And so these are the various small circles. The horizontal ones are the noon latitudes, and the ones on an angle are the morning and the night, shots. And you see there is no ability to see the sun between the 18th and the 22nd, and it sunk on the 21st. So the big thing is how much had the ice moved. But the other thing is when they went through all of the calculations, they saw that Worsley had made a mistake of 1 minute of arc. So that's already 1 minute south. So we still have to account for 2.5 minutes. So that's where the ship was actually found. And what did I put this on for? Yeah, they say that the southern limit was 68.45, and it was around 68.42. Yeah, this is what I really want to show you. So these authors, this is the 2019 paper. They figure that it was somewhere between 68.40 and 68.45, and in fact it was at 68.43 south. So within that range that they had expected. But they were pretty surprised that it was due south. They thought it was going to be a few kilometers east also. That's it.
Randy, what was the depth of the boat when they found it?
3,008 meters, 10,000 feet about, and dead flat. So the water's incredibly clear. It's the clearest water on Earth. And so the ship, the AUV, the automated underwater vehicle, can see something like 80 meters through the water.
Hmm.
And then they've got sonars, side scans. We have this sort of equipment in our ships, but you know, this was the absolute best in the world that was deployed for this particular mission. And we never see any 80 meters with our equipment. We have cameras, and we usually get to within 2 meters of the ocean floor before we take a picture. But those pictures that I showed at the beginning of the talk, they were done from tens of meters back.
A fabulous story. Who would have funded this expedition?
Well, privately. Wait, first of all, the Shackleton did his own fundraising for his. It was started a few weeks after World War I started, and none other than Winston Churchill told him to still go on. But he was fundraising right to the end, Mr. Shackleton. The current mission, which costs a lot more, it was something like $20 million to do this this trip, and it was privately funded. It's with the National Geographic. National Geographic's making a movie about it. There are wonderful drone pictures. You'd just love it, Joe, of the ship, the icebreaker right now. You know, it's National Geographic. It's beautifully photographed and with huge production values. But yeah, private funds went into it. How do you get $20 million? I don't know.
I don't know if it's true, Randy. Maybe you can confirm. I heard that they've deemed this to be like a World Heritage sort of site, and there's intention to never raise the Endeavour. Is that true?
Not only not raised, they're not going to go into it. They're just going to photograph it. Yeah, there's some international treaty, and it's decided that it is it will stay there. I'm kind of surprised. I would have thought there's World Heritage interest to see this time capsule from 100 years ago.
It would be covered under the Antarctic Treaty as well, I think. So that brings another whole level of legalities to it.
Good presentation, Randy.
I love practical astronomy. I know, you know, there's a lot of people there. Mostly you want to see those nice little fuzzballs up there, but there's so much to astronomy that I just really dig.
It's actually nice to have an application of astronomy that could benefit mankind. The biggest question I always got working up in the hills, why on earth are we paying you guys all this money to look at little fuzzballs? Seriously, all the time.
That was actually the formation of the U.S. Naval Observatory, and also to a large extent the Greenwich Observatory in England. One of their raison d'etre was to provide astronomical information for the naval nautical charts. And,
oh, absolutely. Like, this was the big science of the day, and it kind of pissed the people off in Greenwich that it was this guy working in his workshop who actually ended up with the method. The big science astronomical way to do it was to have perfect maps of the stars, perfect predictions of where the moon was going to be, perfect predictions of where the Galilean moons were around Jupiter, and then it would be possible to work out time from a ship. And then this little guy working in his workshop was able to get much higher accuracy than they were able to do astronomically.
Well, he invented a completely new escapement method for the chronometer as well.
Yeah.
Previously with the pendulum, and even with the spring-driven escapements, it was I think the anchor, variations of the anchor type. But he came up with one that, you know, and to be honest, I'm not absolutely sure how this works myself, and it's a bit of a hobby, restoring clocks and whatnot. But
oh, really?
Grasshopper escapement. And as I say, to be honest, I'm not absolutely sure how it works, but it's just mesmerizing to watch an animation of how this escapement actually works.
Okay, Jim, you're now commissioned to give us a Astro Cafe talk on Harrison.
I think he was the son of a carpenter, so I'd be quite happy to do that. He was a bit of a kook, but then again, it's a good question as to whether he was a kook before he had to fight with the establishment, or whether that was a result of trying to fight to get the reward that he was promised.
Martin has a question.
It was actually wasn't a question. It was to do with Harrison. I had a couple of books I was going to show at the end of this, but it's kind of related to this. This is a book I read a couple of years ago, which features Harrison. I think Harrison was the son of a locksmith. I think that was his, if I remember right. But this is a book called The Perfectionists by Simon Winchester. And it's a really fascinating book because it's about the pursuit of precision. So it starts off at like feet and inches and then ends up in sort of nanotechnology, but it goes through Harrison and the making of those clocks as well. And for anybody that's like just interested in how precision has mattered to us, you know, as we have narrowed the field of precision over the course of a few centuries, it's Simon Winchester, so he's a very pop sort of pop sci kind of writer, but it's such a fantastic book. So I was going to mention it.
Martin, could you pop that into the chat?
Yeah,
the name?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, I see in the chat, Bill's actually has one of those Smith watches. That is a valuable artifact.
I'm sure it is. I don't have it right at hand. I'd have to go find the jar that it's in. But it was my grandfather's. He was a train conductor. But
Wow.
the springs broken in it. But it looks, I'll have to look for what the engraving of the name is on it. But from the outside, with the, yeah, it looks exactly the same.
Wow. Dave.
Yeah, this has been quite interesting in our house the last few days because my wife Julia has actually been to Antarctica. She went there in December 2001. She was able to get to Scott's hut and actually was able to see inside Scott's hut. So she's quite interested in the stuff that went on in Antarctica. The most amazing thing was, instead of just knowing the position of the ship, was their skill at sailing and navigating the Southern Ocean from Elephant Island to South Georgia. If you know anything about the weather in the Southern Ocean and what those guys would have had to endure, and then when they get to South Georgia, they land on the wrong side and they have to climb up over the glacier and down the other side to get to whaling station. These guys were the toughest SOBs in the world. There's no two ways about it. It was quite a story.
For the navigation, Worsley, they had a tent on their little lifeboat, and so inside was Shackleton with the chronometer, and Worsley would take his fix with his sight and say now, and then they would mark down the time, and inside the tent, with their fingers frozen so badly that they could hardly hold the pencil, he had to do all the calculations and figure out where to go.
It's just phenomenal.
And had they missed, that was it. They only had one chance.
Yeah.
There's no other people anywhere.
20 miles long? You miss that 20-mile speck in the middle of the sea and you're done.
Yeah.
I was
Just
in
fascinating story.
I was in Antarctica about 6 years ago, and it was a nature tour, and we were there in the beginning of January, of course, in summer, and in one day you could have hail, rain, sleet, snow, sunshine, sleet, rain, snow, sunshine, like within basically within an hour and a half.
So while I'm here, I have artifacts from Antarctica. This is a wind sculptured rock from Marble Point, which is on the mainland. And then from the dry valleys these are what are called ventifacts. They have been sculpted by the wind. She picked those up when she was in the dry valleys. The highest, driest place on Earth.
Wow.
Yeah. So you
I
can
don't know
still see the stuff that it was embedded in.
Mhm.
So she snuck those home.
There's another aspect of Antarctica that, while we're on the topic, that's a good place to find Martian meteorites. Believe it or not, I'm not joking. Because they just end up sitting on the ice in certain places and you just walk along and pick them up.
Well, it's a place that's where most of the meteorites are found, some of which are Martian. But yeah, there's a large catchment area, and then the glaciers bring them together. There are these ice rivers. And so it's not just that you pick them up, but they actually are concentrated because it's a very large area that brings them to one small place. And I think something like 90% of the meteorites that geologists use to date the Earth and things like that come from a specific place in Antarctica.
Well, there's another effect there as well, between the dryness and the wind. The dry air constantly moving in the wind tends to subliminate the ice and snow off the top. So you wind up with what's essentially a glare ice layer with these rocks sitting on top of them. So I've seen films of an expedition where they literally just have a couple of snowmobiles going line abreast across the ice, and when they see a rock, they stop and mark it and pick it up.
Yeah, interesting stories.
There's one other discovery from the undersea photos of the Endeavour, which was exciting for biologists. Well, a lot of it was exciting for biologists, but I really enjoyed seeing the squat lobster, which the Munidopsis, it was a complete surprise to see them that deep. And we have related species right in Saanich Inlet close by, and I used to use them in teaching and some of my students for research. So a lot of exciting new discoveries have come from this seminal discovery that's been searched for so long. It's interesting, Randy.
That's cool.
Your presentation.
Well, thank you again, Randy. That was very interesting. I marvel at the the ability to get that horizon reading. For having lived in the Arctic for many years myself, it is very often very difficult to actually pick out the horizon when everything around you is kind of white and gray.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so they must, I imagine they must have been doing some work to try and level the baseline to try and make sure they were in fact not going up a little bit or down a little bit when they were doing their readings.
Actually, that's a very good point. And one of the, also on when you're on ice, you're not actually getting the true horizon. You're just getting where the ice, and it could be forced up with pressure ridges or any other reason. Yes. So I know that for Perry and some of the other Arctic explorers actually had what they called an artificial horizon, and it was essentially a tray that you could pour mercury into to provide a flat, level, reflective surface, and that way you could take a sighting off your object that you were sighting, whether it was the sun or any other astronomical object, and essentially that would be double the angle between that object and the horizon. So you just divide that by 2 and you've got a true angle to the horizon.
Many challenges working there.
Yeah, we think we're pretty sharp with our modern technology, but those boys were pretty sharp.
Well, I'll tell you, we'd be lost if we were down there now with relying on all our stuff and lost
Yeah.
power or something, we'd be hopeless, pretty much. But
We're all one fuse away from a disaster.
yes, very much so. Thank you again. Dave, you're going to bring us an update on the major construction work in Edmonton.
Well, I just happened to send Roman an email because, of course, he's of Ukrainian extraction, and I wanted to find out if he had any relatives that were in danger in Ukraine. Apparently not. His family have all been over, but apparently he's a Ukrainian Orthodox, and some of the people in the church that he goes to have got people there that they're quite worried about. Anyway, while I was talking to him about that, I asked him how his progress on the scope was going, and I got a little bit of feedback, so I can give you an update. He says, it's going slower than expected, but it's going. He's finished all the drive-in housing components, as well as the cooling fans and ductwork for those. He's working on some ducts for the controls cabinet. The idea is to take all the warm air produced around the scope, duct it down and extract it off the base into the area below the scope so that we don't get any seeing artifacts from the heat produced by the scope itself. And to give you some idea of the way he thinks about things, he's finished the altitude and azimuth locking mechanisms, which include holes at the end for end switches. And the idea is that they're in series with the main power controls, so that if the locks are in place, you can't power up the telescope. He's finishing a variety of small aluminum components. He wants to get a big enough batch to get them anodized. And he's going to start painting soon. But as he says to me, as you know, because I did some of this with him, it's difficult to paint aluminum properly. But he says, 1,000 things to do. I've decided to take a bit of time off now and then, but he says the scope will be in and running before September, even if it kills me. So that's the report on the 32-inch.
That'll be neat to see some photos as they progress with it once they and see what they actually can and then what can it actually do, because that is a quite a large scope, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Pretty good. Well, thanks for keeping us posted about that. Brock, you have a photo or two?
Just one actually, but on Wednesday, I did manage to get some time on a nice target, NGC 2264. So where is it? Sorry, that's not it. There it is. Anyone, I hope you can see it.
Yeah, it looks very good.
Beautiful. It's the Cone Nebula. Not a lot of time. I have about 50 exposures on that. So, but it came out better than I thought, because the moon was getting pretty big and I didn't use a filter, and I thought it was going to be kind of garbage, and it turned out to be a little less like garbage. So I was pretty happy. Yeah.
Would you redo Brock? Would you redo this with the dual band?
Yeah, I would actually. I didn't realize it was such an interesting target. Actually, there's a lot of texture in there. I'd probably like to start again with the narrow band or a moonless night and just get more time on it. It's quite faint, so it's really, really noisy and super stretched, and so.
But it probably would benefit from H alpha reinforcement, right?
Definitely, yeah.
That's high up my target list, Brock. That's a nice image.
What scope did you use on that, Brock?
That was my Celestron 9 1/4.
Yeah.
Brock, where is it located?
It's, I don't know if it's technically within Orion, but it's up above Orion, kind of. When you're looking at Orion, it's kind of up above and to the left, I think. I don't know what the constellations, whether it's within Orion.
Which boundary it's within?
Yeah,
it's sort of in the zone where it all boundaries with Monoceros and Orion and Gemini. It's just, and you need more field, because there's that nebulosity all around it is nicknamed the Foxfur. So it's like a lot of like texture, like you said, it's feathery and furry
Yes.
looking all around the top.
Yeah.
But it's really nice.
Yeah. Thank you very much for showing us that.
My pleasure.
Lauri, you wanted to say a few words about Saturday, the 19th, I believe.
Yes. So we are having another Friends of the DAO star party virtually on this coming Saturday, the 19th, from 7 to 9. And I will give Chris the Zoom link that he can send out on Saturday. Usually Saturday morning, Chris, is when you send that out. And you can get in on the Zoom link you want, or if you'd like, it's also on the YouTube channel. We're having Garima Singh as our presenter. She is here as a postdoc fellow at the NRC. She's worked in Paris and she's also worked at the Subaru. And right now she's doing some work at working on the direct imaging of exoplanets. So looking at doing some work with the adaptive optics and some other work, with the atmospheres. The atmospheres around are blocking the atmosphere of the sun, the stars that it is around, in order to be able to see the direct imaging, or doing the direct imaging of some of the exoplanets that are around there. So she's working here at the NRC doing a lot of the adaptive optics and work. So quite interesting. She's fairly young, and of course everybody's young compared to me, but she's a good speaker. I've heard her speak before, and I think that she'll be really interesting to have. So she'll be speaking from about 10 after 7 till maybe 10 to 8 or so, with a little bit, hoping to get our Ask an Astronomer back up and running again. We haven't had our students from UVic for a little bit, but they might be coming back on board. And then David Lee and his team, his wonderful EAA team, will also be giving us a little bit of some feedback on what's going on. Now, I didn't talk to Dan Posey about whether or not he was going to show anything from the Plaskett itself from the last time. I have to get in touch with him, but we'll see some of the ones tonight.
Yeah, perhaps we could show those and maybe get some commentary, perhaps.
Yeah, from some of that. And then the next one after that is going to be April 16th. And I'm really hoping, I have not heard yet, is whether or not we can get somebody from the Canadian Space Agency to talk about the new Artemis mission. So they're really ramping up. I've even actually seen some of that, come through lately, and they're moving the big mover that takes the rocket over to the site. They're starting to move that kind of thing for Artemis 1. So that's coming in, and we'll have a little bit of some work on that. And then the May the 7th, as we talked about earlier, will be Chris Gainor will be basically launching his book. So he will be, if we are in person, he will be very happy to sign copies. And we also will possibly have a little bit of a fundraiser for that for the FDAO as something, but we'll see what happens with that. So we're looking forward to working with everybody, and we hope that you can come and join us. I think there'll be relatively good news coming out from the federal government, and that things may start to ramp up a little bit more. But we have also been saying that for a year. So until such time, our hands are tied. So.
Lauri, could you mention something about the potential for us to do some volunteer work with the Artemis project, like as that unfolds? There's going to be an across Canada kind of a virtual kind of tour.
Oh, yes, yes. And there's going to be on actually on May the 7th, on International Astronomy Day, the RASC is going to have an hour and a half long program that will go from like the West Coast to the East Coast, and hoping that the different centers will chime in at different times when it comes to them within that hour and a half, and do something on looking at the moon. So we want to have things. So if we are open and actually in person on May the 7th, then we can possibly be up at the center and looking at the moon and showing different spots. If it's not very good in other places, then people will have something already recorded and do. But we want kids to put in their drawings. We would like people to put in their sketches, anything that of problems or delights about looking at the moon. All of that kind of thing will be put in. So it's a cross Canada program for the International Astronomy Day.
May 7th is the day before quarter, so it's perfect.
That's what they are they're hoping to do. So I kind of suggested that the Victoria group would be happy to do something with that kind of thing, because we always are. The only thing is, of course, we're 4 hours different than Halifax, but they're going to look at exactly what they're going to do with the timing of that. These different groups across Canada are going to be doing in-person and virtual programs across Canada in the different centers. Not everybody, but some of the main centers will be doing this. So we're out there. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Lauri. Martin, you had a couple of photos for us, I believe.
I did. Let's have a look. Yeah, let's do that. Is that coming up?
So it looks like it's in the kind of thumbnail, but the main piece is blank.
Okay, hang on a second. Are you seeing anything now?
It's a bigger blank.
Yeah.
All right, hold on a sec. Let's just see if I can get. I just want to get desktop. Let's just do that. Okay, right.
I think now we've got it. Yeah.
Okay,
that's good.
Let me see if I can do that. Does that still show, or is that?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Okay. So I realized I'd had a really long period of not seeing any skies. I'd been doing. I looked at my data, and the last thing I'd shot was the middle of November, and I didn't get to shoot again until the middle of February, which is kind of heartbreaking. But this was from last weekend. This is the obviously the Rosette Nebula. I actually was set up in 2 different locations on my driveway in 2 different telescopes for the first time ever, and I shot that originally like this, but obviously we do the star reduction thing, and that was the kind of final image. This is about 2 hours and 25 minutes of total exposure on the Rosette. This is just using a regular standard unmodified digital SLR, a Nikon D850, and all processed in PixInsight and then Lightroom and Photoshop, and just for fun, that's the starless version. So I was quite pleased with that final one. I also realized that I hadn't shot anything of Orion since the first kind of month that I started taking astro pictures, which was in October of 2019. I didn't get to see Orion at all last winter, and I thought I was going to lose it again this winter. But I just got, this is just under an hour and a half of exposure on the area around Alnitak with the Horsehead and the Flame Nebula. And again, this is star reduction. I feel like I had a little bit of an epiphany over the last couple of days with certain post-processing techniques, which I'm really happy about. Again, that's the starless version of that. This is M51. This was shot with the bigger telescope, which is my first kind of attempts at doing that. Not terribly happy with that one, but it's definitely M51. And then this is M81, which I shot last year on the small refractor, and I used about 6 hours. And I did M81 and M82, and then this is a much shorter amount of exposure on just M81. But again, sort of quite pleased with the detail pulling out of that. And then M101, I'm still working on this one right now. I probably shot 5 or 6 different targets last weekend, not the weekend just gone, but the weekend before. So I'm still plundering the data and tossing bad data and incorporating new data and trying to figure out ways of getting the best out of the data I got. And oh yeah, I just wanted to show, this is an old picture, but I wanted to show this because it was to do with my book recommendations. I posted this on the Instagrams. One of the things I'm finding really interesting with Amazon and their digital print on demand stuff is you can get sort of older books that are not generally available. So this is, let me stop sharing for a second. Oh, actually, no, I wanted to show something on here. I got this book about Alvin Clark and Sons, which is really just an interesting older book about the telescope makers, Alvin Clark and his 2 sons. It also has a very interesting list of a lot of the telescopes that they made and where they are now and all that kind of stuff. David, did you have a question?
No, I after you're done, I wanted to show Marjie where the cone was.
Oh, okay.
The cone nebula was.
And then the other book that I've just finished reading, which is to do with this moon picture, is actually another one that was reprinted, which is all about Agnes Clerk, who was Irish science writer. It was interesting because it kind of tied into Randy's conversation of earlier, because her father, the Clerk sisters, which is Ellen and Agnes, and the brother Aubrey, were all homeschooled by their father, John Clerk. And John was in the small village in Ireland that they were from, which is called Gisborne. He was the guy with the telescope doing all the transit timing. So he was the arbiter of the timekeeping for the town of Gisborne while they were living there. But Agnes Clerk knew everybody in the astronomy fields. She was one of the original members of the British Astronomical Association, which was the sort of amateur counterpart that was founded to the Royal Astronomical Society. In fact, she was one of the first council members, one of only 4 women that were council members. Eventually, she was granted an honorary membership to the Royal Astronomical Society. And then in 1973, there was a little crater right just here. I don't know if you can see my cursor moving, which is just on the Taurus Littrow, which is where Apollo 17 landed, that was renamed Clerk after her. So I just posted a little story about that on Instagram this week, about Agnes Clerk. But yeah, if you're interested, this is written by Mary. Let me do that. Written by. Can I go big, or am I just?
Maybe we can spotlight you.
Yeah. Anybody can spotlight me, Mr. Purse, please. Just tiny window.
Okay, you should be spotlighted for everybody now. Hopefully.
No, trying. Hello. No, okay. Well, it's by Dr. Mary Brooke, who was another Irish astronomer, and it's quite an interesting read about. Really, what was fascinating, I think, about Clerk is she was really at the time when astrophysics became astrophysics. So when spectrum measurements were made and all that kind of stuff. So it's a really interesting read if anybody's interested in that. And that was about it.
Good job on the images, Martin.
Very
Thanks,
nice.
chap.
Nice job, Martin.
Great. Okay, David, you are going to.
Yeah, I'm just
What's
going to
the
show.
locale?
I'm just going to show Margie where the cone is. It's actually in the area we've been talking about. Margie, can you see this screen?
Yes.
Okay, so the cone is here, and there's the rosette that Martin showed us. But you can see Betelgeuse, and this is Orion here. These are the belt stars. So that's actually where it's located.
Thank you.
Welcome.
While this picture is up,
Oop. You want to
I
go
just
back?
want to say that it is exactly 100 years since Plaskett was working on his star. You see Plaskett's star just above the rosette. And so his first measurement was in December, and he took about 3 months of measurements to weigh it. And it was the largest star known at the time. And that's just a quick version of a talk that I hope to give in a Astro Cafe soon.
Good.
Oh,
How do you
and
know all this stuff?
Dennis Crabtree is also going to give something at the April meeting, that he's going to do something on the Plaskett star as well. So maybe I should invite both of you to come and do something.
Well, he'll talk about the science, and I'll kind of do a background of how you weigh stars.
Ah, there you go. That would be great.
At a very big scale.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much.
Curiously, I just finished reading literally last night a biography of Cecilia Payne Gaposchkin, who was the one who determined the hydrogen was the main element of the stars. But she was a fixture at the Harvard Observatory, one of the, well, practically founding members. And throughout the book, Dr. Plaskett from Victoria was actually had quite a bit of contact back and forth between her and the Harvard Observatory. So it was interesting to see his name coming up.
Also, with those Harvard Observatory with Gaposchkin, and just prior to that with Williamina Fleming, just the connection to the picture. She was the first one to see the Horsehead Nebula as well. So that was the first time it was recorded. It was the first time it had been seen because it was recorded on a photographic plate.
Yeah, actually,
it's all
the plate
connected.
Yeah, the plate is actually on the internet if you want to see it. I think it's under the Harvard page, but there's actually a picture of the actual plate.
Actually, that would be very interesting to see. There's quite a long description of the spectrograms on the glass plates that she collected her data from, and I was having a hard time just visualizing what the actual look of them would be. I'm so used to seeing spectra in color, trying to imagine it on a monochromatic glass plate in reverse was a little bit of a stretch.
There's stacks of them up at the DAO.
Yeah, they've got a huge collection, haven't they?
At the Casca in, when was it, 20, I can't remember. The one before the last one that was in Victoria, so 20 years ago or whatever. We went down, and the woman who's responsible for them, I can't remember her name, she was showing us them. She showed us the very first slide ever taken with the Plaskett.
Elizabeth Griffin.
Yeah, it was so cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
She pulled out this box and said, "This is the very first glass plate ever done." It was very cool.
Here's the plate. Actually, I found it, and there's the horse head right there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, not super distinct, is it? But I guess it's there. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's neat. Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
That's really neat. Great. Don't know if anybody else has anything for this evening.
I have something to share that is not, that I'll do it at the end, but it's not astronomy related at all.
I think Joe was going to flip up the stuff from the Plaskett, actually,
right?
That Dan had done.
Did we lose him? Yeah, I think we did.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are.
He's in the process of doing
there.
I'm just struggling with share as usual. Okay. Well, so these are processed by Dan. This was the Plaskett session. For people who don't know, the Plaskett session is arranged probably a couple times a year, where RASC Victoria Center members have access to the large scope on Observatory Hill. And there were a few of us there. And this happened on March 5th. So Dan has produced or processed some of the data. This was an all-night session, so there's quite a bit of data. And this is the Blackhead, or Black Eye, pardon me, galaxy M64. Just let me get his notes up so I can tell you what happened. The first is the Black Eye galaxy M64, which is a bonus image that Doug and I, Doug was stayed with Dan all night up at the observatory, and so that was a good thing. There's two of them there. It was a bonus image that they grabbed at the end of the night between 5 and 6 a.m. This is 18 minutes of exposure split across 3 filters, and it came out quite well, as he's remarking. There's a lot of background detail in this one, but he kept it fairly clean, so he didn't push it too hard. So that's available on our RASC Vic photo hosting website. You can get to that from our main website, or I can send the link to you. Okay. Now, the next one is really cool. Maybe I'll just show you the title first. So this is Hexen 44. Hexen 44, it was suggested by Bill Weir, and I think we're all happy that that suggestion was made, because it's beautiful. And thanks to the Plaskett's aperture and sensor, this is a very deep field. So I would encourage you to go onto our photo hosting website and peer around a bit, because it's quite interesting.
Unfortunately, it's missing one of the group. It's just the way that it's the way the camera is. If it was rotated to put the spherical galaxy right at the top, it might bring it, because just outside where the pair of stars is in the bottom right corner, there's another galaxy, but it's what it is.
Yeah, I'll just read Dan's description. This is, by the way, his descriptions are posted, and the links to these images are posted on the RASC Vic email list. So if you're a member of that, you can just follow the bouncing ball. Hexen 44 is a group of 4 member galaxies: NGC 3190, 3193, 3187, and 3185. We weren't able to fit in 3185 into the frame, but we captured the other 3. Lots of detail in the main galaxies and some incredible background features. He used the Hubble image of 3190 to look for some familiar features, and a lot of those subtle background galaxies make their appearance in this image. So he encourages you to go on our website and poke around. There you go. Those are the 2 images.
He made a comment about how most of the things you see on the Plaskett, if you're patient, you could do with the VCO, but there was one thing that he said really was something you'd never see with our equipment, but I didn't understand what that was.
That was the second image that he was talking about, and he has a whole paragraph on it. But basically, it comes down to light gathering capability and resolution between such a huge telescope compared to the amateur telescopes. And as all amateur astronomers will tell you, aperture always wins.
It's those little faint galaxies in the background, the little tiny distortions and smudges. They're all galaxies, right? But the three main galaxies in that group, you can see with like a 6-inch telescope.
Yeah, it's about 50 times as much light gathering as a typical amateur scope. So the VCO could have shown a similar image, but we would have had to spend over 20 hours at it, and it still wouldn't measure up.
Yeah, you still need the aperture to get the resolution. You still need.
But it comes down to, yeah.
Great, thank you. So I think we're to Marjie. You wanted to the final word, and maybe you could just remind us about next week's speaker too.
Oh, right. Yeah, okay. Several months ago, Randy asked me, because sometimes I sit here and paint while we have our meeting, and he asked me what I was painting. And I showed you the painting at the time. And so now it is finished. So here it is.
Absolutely beautiful. Just astounding.
Could we spotlight you?
Oh, there we go.
There you go. Oh.
Very nice.
Colors,
Very nice.
beautiful, Marjie. Yeah.
What's the medium? What's the medium, Marjie?
It's acrylic.
Acrylic. Okay.
And it's a very small Arctic plant. So the plant on the painting and the plant in real life are about the same size.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's the most detailed painting I've ever painted in 14 years.
You've got a lot of fine detail in the kind of hair-like structure.
A
right?
lot. Yeah.
A lot of 000 brushes.
You got some talent there, Marjie.
So what's the plant?
I actually don't know the name of it.
Oh.
Yes, it's called Very Small.
Great.
So I have one thing I want to ask. It's a quick question, and nobody from the prairies can answer it because there seem to be. Does the name Lucien Kemble mean anything to anybody here? See,
Kemble's Cascade.
Kemble's
Right.
Cascade, yeah.
But beyond that.
Mm.
Well,
Was he a priest? He was a
Roman
priest,
Catholic
wasn't he?
priest.
The
Yeah.
priest,
Yeah, he was a priest.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's just something that I've wondered, because some of the people to the people in the prairies, Calgary, Alberta and Saskatchewan, he's like super famous astronomer guy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yes. He was out of, I think, a Regina Center.
There you go, Dave.
Yeah. And he was a really good friend of Bruce McCurdy and the guys in Edmonton. They really enjoyed it.
And the Calgary guys too. Yeah, because he was outside Calgary somewhere, one of the towns with a C.
Yeah,
where he was like he's a Franciscan.
Yeah,
and he was a very famous to people who observe. He was a visual observer. And he's thousands and thousands of observations. And I was just curious because Chris Beckett in Saskatchewan, he's become obsessed with the man. And it's just, because the Regina Center has all his logs.
Yeah.
And his old observatory, which Chris is pissed because they've just turned it into a garden shed that they keep a lawnmower in or something like that. But it's just, he's working on some writings to sort of try and popularize them. I was just curious if anybody, because I think he's more famous on the prairies than in the West, or or to old timers who are visual and have been with the RASC for a while.
Yeah, I could actually bring up Kemble's cascade, actually. It's kind of interesting figure. You can actually see it here. Oops.
Because he published an article in the British astronomy magazine that's called 50 to the Pole. And he started taking on an observing project where he wanted to observe everything that was sort of north of latitude 50 on the celestial sphere, because everybody points their scopes south and nobody points their scopes north. And I think there was about 3,000 objects that he made an attempt to find. And he picked some and wrote an article about trying to guide people to change the direction they stick their telescopes.
Yeah, this along with the straight formation and the coat hanger is quite intriguing, because you often wonder how you get this kind of formation that's so long and consistent.
What's pretty is it ends in a really pretty little star cluster.
This guy here?
On the southern tip of it. Or is it the north? Maybe
I think it's here.
Because I'm a Newtonian. I'm thinking wrong.
Yeah, I think it's this one here. I don't know what it is, but it's this one.
I think it's NGC 1502. That strikes a bell in my head.
It's hard to say what it is.
We have members who have imaged it.
Yeah.
Cascade is much more prominent in a visual image than in this depiction. It sticks out quite amazingly.
Yeah, see the star cluster?
Yeah, that's quite pretty actually.
It's got a lot of colorful stars.
Yeah.
It's a big chain of stars, so it's maybe a degree or two in length.
Yeah, so this is this frame is a 300 excuse me, is a 300 millimeter lens inside of an APS sensor. So that's how much shows up in Cascade.
I was just going to say there is an article in the Sky News magazine, on the latest Sky News magazine. It's on page 50 on Kemble's Cascade.
Ah, wonderful.
If you want to have a quick look, you can have a look for it there.
So many references.
I never was fortunate enough to meet him, but he was certainly well known to the guys in Edmonton. He was well known as a kind and gentle and outgoing person.
I met him a couple times, and he certainly was a really, really nice person.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
Thank you very much. So Marjie, are we all good for next week, as far as we know, by the way?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, so Deborah will join us.
Yes, Deborah Lockhurst is joining us. She's actually in Edmonton at this point, so it'll 7:30 our time is fine for her.
Dragonfly, right?
Pardon me?
Yes.
Dragonfly?
She will talk about the Dragonfly
right.
telescope. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So yeah. So unless there's anything else for this evening, I guess we'll call it an evening, and we'll be back next week to listen to Deborah, and if there's time afterwards, if you do have some more things, we can do that. And we're hoping to have Vicky Siegel the week after, I think it is. Just confirming that still. So, but I think that's it for this evening. So thank you again for joining us, and have a good week, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.